Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining myself and my special guest this evening, Sterling. I'm having a great time just chatting and getting to know Sterling a little bit better. So tonight we are going to be talking about how to find high quality opportunities in a hot market. Now, it's not like, hot markets are not easily found. Sorry, just let me check in for 1 second. Sterling, are you just seeing my slide or are you seeing the speaker's presentation?
Yeah, I can see your slide. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that I'm sharing the right stuff. Awesome. Okay. All right. So where was I? Oh, hold on, back up 1 second here. Okay, so we were talking about finding high quality opportunities in a hot market. And the challenge, Sterling, you could probably speak more to the US market than I could at this point, but the challenge that a lot of Canadians are finding, especially in Ontario, is every market recently has been a hot market. And as much as, the economists and everyone talked about, COVID is going to slow the market, everything's going to grind to a halt, we're going to blah, blah, blah. That clearly hasn't happened. They're talking about interest rate hikes next year, perhaps up to 8, and that would obviously have an impact on the market. But for right now, most of us are looking to invest in a hot market. And one of the reasons I wanted to invite you to join us this evening is because you have a lot of experience in hot markets and you have some really cool strategies that I thought would be awesome to, it's always nice to be one of the first ones who are doing a strategy in a market. And obviously there's less competition when there's not as many of you doing the same thing.
Right.
So we have the fortune this evening, everyone, of having Sterling Anderson join us. Sterling has a company called SimpleKey Homes. He is an extremely active investor in the US and a number of different markets, and he's going to share a lot of his tips, tricks, strategies, and some, sort of behind the curtain, maybe not shared with everybody all the time kind of thing, because we're so well behaved up here in Canada. You can share secrets. We promise we'll keep them, Sterling.
Love it. Love it. Good.
Fantastic. So here's our agenda for this evening. Welcome and introductions. Obviously, there'll be a discussion period. I have a number of prepared questions for Sterling, which I'll share with everybody in just a couple of moments. And then we'll have a question and answer period. So you guys will have the opportunity to really dig in, ask Sterling about his experience, his investments, insights, and anything else that he's willing to share with us. And then there'll be a short webinar wrap up at the end. My goodness, it's been a day. All right. So just a little housekeeping for those of you, if it's your first time joining me in one of my webinars, just a reminder, at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a bar that has chat and then a raise your hand and a Q&A in it. So not all webinars do, but I like to separate things into the chat and the Q&A. So if you have a question that you would like to ask Sterling, please take a second and put it in the Q&A box. That way, as we're, conversing, and if we ask opinions or questions from everyone, all that information goes into the chat, we would lose your question. But this way in the Q&A box, we can keep track of it. We can make sure when we get to the Q&A portion of this evening that we can circle back and get you some answers for your questions. So just a reminder, when you are using the chat box, there's a little drop down here. Make sure you go to all panelists and attendees, or it might say everyone, or whatever version of Zoom you have. So just make sure it's not just panelists, because if it is, then Sterling and I are the only ones who get to see that message. So make sure if you want to chat or share information with everybody in the webinar that you have it clicked all panelists and attendees. So my name is Elizabeth Kelly. I have the good fortune of being your host for the webinar this evening. Thank you so much to each of you for joining me. I absolutely love this part of my month when I have the opportunity to interview really cool people, share some of their insight and information with you. I've been a real estate investor for, I was calculating the other day, it's actually coming up to 17 years.
Hey.
Yeah, it's been a while. It makes me feel a little old, but experienced and wise, right? That's what
there you go. Experience, seasoned,
exactly.
seasoned.
Well seasoned. I love it. So during that time, I've had the great fortune of doing pretty much every strategy that most newer investors are starting out doing. Everything from buy, rent, and hold, rent to owns, BRRRRs, flipping, wholesaling, that kind of stuff. I was also a trainer for an elite trainer for Rich Dad Canada until I started my own coaching company a few years ago. I am based in Kirkland Lake, Ontario right now, which is the Great White North. And we have about 400 investment units that we own and manage. So I have the good fortune this evening of being joined by Sterling. And Sterling is the president and CEO of SimpleKey, and he's based in Omaha, Nebraska. So we were just chatting about how much snow. And Sterling, have you had any snow yet this year, or no snow yet?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay.
But I would imagine the next couple of weeks it'll probably be on the way.
Perfect. That's awesome. So Sterling started his real estate career in 2011, and he's done all kinds of things, beginning with wholesaling and flipping and then moving into rentals. He's done some really cool deals, which we have the fortune that he's going to share with us this evening. And one of the things I love about Sterling and that impresses me so much is Sterling has 7 children. And he has some really clear boundaries. And I think for a lot of us as investors, that's kind of where we struggle, is how do we draw the boundary between, we're starting this business, or we've got this side hustle, we've still got our job. How do we carve out time for family and for quality relationships? So we were chatting earlier, and you've done a fantastic job of really, the phone goes off and that's it. Do not disturb. And I love that.
Thank you.
Perfect. So one of the things that I'd like to change up a little bit during this webinar is I realized in the past, we've sort of assumed that everybody who was in the room had a certain level of knowledge of real estate. And some of the concepts that we're going to talk about this evening, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page so that everybody has the full benefit of the information we're covering. So I'm just going to do a couple of slides on what I call the elements of a deal. So there's basically 3 different elements of a deal that you can change based on what's going on in the market or what your strategy is. So the first element of a deal is property acquisition. So most of us are either going to acquire our deals from realtors, wholesalers, or private or off-market sellers. One of the first levers we pull when we're in hot markets is most of the time we're going to move away from realtors and realtor.ca because those, bidding wars and a lot of competition. First lever we're going to pull is we're probably going to move to wholesalers and see whether we have more success with securing our next deal from wholesalers who are active in the market. And if we either can't find what we're looking for, there's still a lot of competition there. Most people will actually move to private or off-market sellers, and that will be their main source of leads. And I'm so glad that you're going to talk a little bit about wholesaling, Sterling, because I think people are going to be looking for a few tips and tricks on, how do we find some of those off-market deals, or what's the best way to really make an impression with the wholesalers so that maybe we can get on, those VIP lists and get access to the deals first.
Oh, yeah. Good, good.
The second element of a deal is what we're actually going to do with the property when we have it. So these are strategies to stabilize or monetize the property. So maybe we're going to do renovations to force appreciation, which of course would be a flip strategy. Maybe we're just going to, it's a multi-unit building, so we're going to do some upgrades so that we can charge higher rent. We can change the use of a property. So these would be BRRRRs, conversion to duplex, severing, those kinds of things. Basically, most of the time what we're attempting to do is increase the income and or lower the expenses. So maybe it's cash for keys to get a better caliber of tenant once our renovations are completed, implement cost efficiencies, looking for ways that we, transfer utility payments over to the tenants, or ways that we can, find efficiencies in heating systems. And sometimes it's building upgrades or additional fees, installing coin laundry, charging for parking, adding storage. These are all different things that we can do. Every time we look at a property, we should be thinking, what is the highest and best use of this property? And I think one of the challenges Sterling and I were talking about earlier is that in a hot market, a lot of people really focus on, okay, this is my strategy. Now I have to find a property that fits this strategy. Whereas sometimes it makes more sense to say, I'm going to find an opportunity, and then I'm going to figure out what I can do with that property, because the biggest opportunity comes from getting a property undervalued. So if we focus more on getting a property under value, once we have it, we can take a look and see what are these different ways or options do we have to stabilize or monetize this property for maximum return. And then the last component or element of a deal is the end game. What is our plan with this property? So, short term, maybe we're going to sell it with a realtor, wholesaler, or privately. If we're thinking sort of midterm, maybe we rent to own the property to someone. Or what a lot of people are focusing on right now is refinance the property and then hold on to it for the long term. So hopefully that's provided some clarity for everybody joining us this evening so that when we talk about these different things, we'll all be on the same page. These are the questions that I had prepared to ask Sterling, and I'm sure, we'll end up all over because you are such a wealth of information. But so I want to make sure we talk about the benefits of focusing on a portfolio of small properties, because I know you have, you love to buy homes, or at least you did in the past. And it's really interesting because myself included, I've always struggled to make the numbers work with small homes. So I'm interested to hear about what are the pros and cons. Obviously, insurance would probably be easier, and a whole, financing and a lot of other things. And then we'll talk a little bit about, do you look for a market first, or do you choose your strategy first and then look for a market where the strategy works? We'll talk about how you personally find investment opportunities in hot markets. Then, of course, you have to tell us about the hotel conversions, because that's not something we see a lot of up here, at least not in my networks anyways. So dying to hear more about that. We'll talk a little bit about looking back. What do you wish you had known when you started your investment journey? What might you have done differently? And then top 3 tips for investors who are entering a new market and or changing investment strategies. So if you guys have questions for Sterling that don't fall under those, make sure you put them in so that we get a chance to cover that information. So thank you again, Sterling. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So tell us a little bit about, actually, you know what, maybe we'll start with wholesaling, because that's where you started. So tell us a little bit about how you got into wholesaling and kind of what made you a good wholesaler.
Yeah, so I had started off, and I remember getting, it was like some type of postcard or some type of mail in the mail about wholesaling, and it was, learn how to place properties under contract with just $10 or something to that effect. But I would start looking up, like, Cody Sperber and Kenny Rushing were 2 guys that I followed back then, and learned their strategies and would go out and implement their strategies. And back then, 2010, 2011 is when, you could just do a deal so easily. It took some work. Wholesaling is a marketing intensive business, but you could get a deal pretty solid and pretty easy. And from that first deal, I think it was a duplex, and I made $700 off of that deal. From there, I was hooked. I had to renew the contract another 30 days to find a buyer, after that 30 days was up. But I was confident in finding a buyer. Craigslist was truly popping back then. So I would put it on there and blast it out, and started to, develop a list of buyers. And some of those buyers are still with me today. 2 of them are actually 2 of the reasons why I got back into the single family business, and doing that, because they're still looking for deals. There's a lot of investors looking for deals. But wholesaling is truly that way to be able to get in, because wholesaling is going to teach you everything. A lot of what you need to know about real estate, you'll learn from wholesaling. You'll learn about how to pick your markets, how to, determine your ARV and your rehab numbers, and learning about different neighborhoods and doing all that. You'll learn everything you need to know when it comes to wholesaling.
Wow, that's awesome. So what do you think it was that made you a successful wholesaler? Were you super persistent? Did you just flyer neighborhoods? Were you an excellent negotiator? What was sort of your hidden superpower that made you a great wholesaler?
Yeah, definitely being persistent and following up. If Elise say, hey, I can't talk right now, I'm definitely making sure I'm following back up and finding out when's going to be the next best time that we can talk. Even my marketing back then, sending out the whole yellow letters thing, making sure that those went out every week or every other week. So it was really that consistency and follow-up, which truly made me, a pretty good wholesaler back then. Now, we've heard people say, well, you guys actually answer the phone when we call. We have live agents that take our calls and schedule appointments for us and run through a whole script and really develop that relationship with that seller. Same thing with our buyers. We take the time to develop relationships back then. And I knew that back then too. If these are going to be the guys that are going to be buying, our properties, I want to make sure that I build a pretty solid relationship with them. And, that's been done, and that was key. But definitely that consistency as follow-up was very important.
Absolutely. And what could a prospective buyer do to really stand out in your mind? Like, did you have a VIP list of people you knew could absolutely close, who had a pool of private money and were sitting there? And if someone came to you and said, hey, I'm looking for this type of property, or I'm looking in this market, would you have sent them something, that was right up their alley? And then if they passed on it, then put it out to the network?
Yeah, well, I've learned from that. I've learned, it's cool to have the VIP buyers list, and if nobody takes that, and then you put it out to everybody else. I just started sending, stuff out to everybody. Now there are those select few that it's just like, okay, I know this is what he wants, so I'll go ahead and I'll give him a call. 9 times out of 10, he'll take it and he'll close.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't stress the importance of like really vetting your buyers, because you'll come across some buyers just like, okay, hey, yeah, I want to see the property, I'm interested, but you're another wholesaler. Then we get into the whole daisy chain thing, of you're trying to take my property and market it to your buyers. I don't have a problem with JVing a property. If somebody wants to bring me a buyer, I'm happy to split, the profits 50-50, but tell me that you're doing that. Don't pose as another buyer. But for your buyers that you do have, vet them. Ask them, what properties have they closed on recently? Or, that's public info. You can look that stuff up too. What properties have they closed on recently? What are they looking for? What are their investment goals for the next 5 years? And then you become a part of fulfilling that goal by making sure that you're servicing properties to them. And that's everything from identifying that property, is making sure that you are running the numbers on that property. You want that buyer to ask as few questions as possible because you've already given it to them. And that just makes for, just building that credibility with that buyer. It makes for great conversation and definitely some deals down the road.
Absolutely. Now, has wholesaling grown as quickly in the US as it has here in Canada? It just seems like there's a ton of wholesalers, and, there's lots of people, lots of investors, you see them posting on Facebook. They're like, hey, buddy, I got your letter. And then everybody else is like, oh, me too. I got your letter. Is that happening in the US, or because your numbers, you just have so many more properties and homes, does that not really happen down there?
No, wholesale it's definitely exploded. In any market that you go into, there's a lot more wholesalers today, than there were, even 2-3 years ago. There's just a lot more, and it just, the market becomes a little bit saturated, but there's still opportunities that can be found, and sometimes that keeps people away. They figure, there's too many, wholesalers in my market. Well, what can you do to stand out from those other wholesalers? What can you do to push out content, from those other wholesalers to be able to get those deals? So you just have to find different ways to stand out. But yeah, certainly here in the US, wholesaling is really, really, really taken off.
Absolutely. Do you think there was something special or something different about you that would make, if somebody had, 3 or 4 or 5 different flyers from wholesalers, what do you think would make them pick you? Because I know a lot of us are, we want to find opportunities. And sometimes, if we're not finding anything from wholesalers, then we start going directly to sellers ourselves in this market. What could set us apart? What were your secrets to get people to sell their property to you?
Yeah, like I said, it was the, having a direct line and not just a voice recording when somebody called. It was my picture on the flyer or postcard. It was the follow-up. It was, people looking you up, and sellers will do that. Especially if they're really into technology, they'll find your Instagram, they'll find your Facebook, they'll find your company website. And so just really having that credibility out there too. It's like, okay, this is a real person. This is not just a company trying to come in and take my property. This is a person who is sincerely trying to help me. And I see that by how his marketing is, by how he is, online. When I call his company, how they're so helpful on the other end. So doing a lot of those things and really treating your business like a business, not just a hobby. Even if you have a 9 to 5 and that's something that you are working to get away from, still treating this business as a business. I think that's really key in having success in it.
I love that. It's funny because a lot of my coaching clients, they're couples, and they come to me and they're at various stages of running a business. And that's one of the things I tell my clients as well is, you have to treat this like a business. So that means that, when somebody's in the middle of like feeding the baby, you don't come in with a list of like, oh, by the way, you need to do this for the business. Like you set up, business meetings, Monday mornings at 8 o'clock, everybody sits down and talks about what are we doing this week? Like, I think the boundaries are really important, and it sounds like that's something you're really good at doing.
Very, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. So tell us about the portfolio of small properties, and these will be all single family homes, or you got some duplexes in there?
Yeah, just single family homes. Looking for duplexes, and we actually just, we wholesaled a lot. But for the rental side, just the single family homes, there's 3 that were scheduled to close on Friday. So picking those up and then looking for more. Big fan of the BRRRR strategy. I think anyone who hops into rentals should really, take a look at doing that. It certainly works out and is a really big benefit to anyone who gets involved. But yeah, just on the single family rentals. And then of course we have the multifamily side as well, which is so much going on over there. And we'll certainly talk about that. But yeah, just really trying to build more of the single family rental base. I think one of my regrets is I was already doing the single family and I left it for multifamily. Well, it was still producing an income. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things you don't cut off a revenue stream. So I learned that lesson. Don't cut off a revenue stream that's producing revenue for you. Yeah. Although you're going after something bigger over there, keep that revenue stream, or partner with somebody who can run the day-to-day operations. Which I have someone coming on that's going to start running the day-to-day operations of SimpleKey, which allows me to focus more on Sterling Capital and the larger syndications that we do. So it's like making sure that business is properly planned so that you can take on more and expand. That's really key.
That's awesome. So it's really kind of a who, not how. And I'm assuming most of us in real estate, especially entrepreneurs, we've read who, not how. So it's about instead of ending an income stream, it's about finding the right person to run it so that you can continue to grow your revenue streams. Most of us in real estate, we don't just have the one, we have multiple businesses going on.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how do you choose your markets? And do you choose your market first, or your strategy? Do you go somewhere and say, oh, the fundamentals in this market are really strong? What strategy would work here? Or do you go, okay, well, I really want to do BRRRRs, so I'm going to go find a market where it works. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, initially when I'm starting off going into another market, I know that I'm either going to do wholesaling or I'm going to do fix and flip. Until I get a little bit more familiar with the market to keep a rental there, I know there's going to be one of those 2 strategies that I'm going to do. From that, I'm looking to see who can I connect with in that particular market. What can they tell me about that market? Developing relationships, with realtors and brokers and other wholesalers too, because those are going to be the ones that, of course, bring you some deals in those other markets. Finding out, where the hot zip codes are in that other market. I mean, there's a cool little trick. Use listsource.com and it'll tell you the hottest market and zip codes in any market. I love using that because that lets me know, okay, here's where I need to drop some marketing. Here's where buyers are buying. Here's where I have the most likelihood of being able to wholesale a deal or even do a fix and flip because it's a really popular market. So just using the tools that are available to you, that lets me know, okay, this is where we need to go. I'll take, for example, on the multifamily side, we just put out marketing in Cincinnati and Fort Wayne, Indiana. And my first, thing was like, okay, I know a couple of guys up there. Let me see if they're interested in JVing. Let's talk a little bit more about the market, drop some marketing. They can go see those properties. If we happen to get somebody that calls and get it under contract, and we're happy to split the deal. If it's something that we can make happen. So it's really about using those tools and resources. I mean, again, this business it's marketing, it's networking, and really, being able to pull those resources together to help you obtain what you're looking to do helps tremendously.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you're thinking about heading into a new market, what fundamentals would you look for? Are you looking at employment? Are you looking at average household income? Like what are your, like, if these three things aren't here, then I'm out. Doesn't matter
Right.
what the rest of the stuff looks like.
Yeah, employment, where the job's looking like, where that property is it in a path of progress? Are there things happening around that property that are going to cause it to grow further? But we all know, is there a Starbucks around it? Is there a Walmart around it? Is there a Panera? Well, I mean, you're looking for those different types of things too. So those are all things that we're looking for, when we hop into those markets, both on the single family side and the multifamily side as well.
Do you have a minimum or a maximum size restriction? Because I know, obviously Canada, our populations are a lot smaller. So, we have
Mhm.
people here who, if it's less than 50,000, I'm not interested. And then there's other
Right.
people who, the market has literally forced them into the hot market has forced them to look at, communities where there's 10,000 people here or 20,000 or 30,000 people. And people
Right.
never would have looked at them before, but the numbers don't work in the bigger markets anymore.
In the bigger markets, yeah, yeah, and that's something that you have to really be careful with too. And we do that when we're going into different markets. Like we'd like to be, 250, 300,000, population and above, certainly. But again, the numbers have to work. That property needs to be in a decent location, even in the D class areas. What's happening in those D class areas? Is there improvement here? We have some of that stuff going on here in Omaha. So you just have to really look at what's happening, and you have to see that future vision and know, okay, this area is going to appreciate, things are going to come back in this area. You really have to see that long term when you start to go into those D class areas. Now, if it's B and C class areas, then absolutely you stick to, your metrics as far as what's happening with employment, what's happening with education, path of progress, jobs, all those different things, shopping, what is it around, you stick to those and, be able to make it work.
Absolutely. It's awesome. It's interesting because our markets are so similar, but at the same time, they're
Yeah,
so different. Like your
so
scale
different.
is just, phenomenal compared to ours.
Crazy. That's
You
so
guys
crazy.
also don't have a lot of the privacy stuff that we do. Like you guys have
Right.
access to a lot more information online than we can get. It's harder sometimes, I think, as Canadians to find information. We need to be a
Yeah.
little more resourceful, and I think we need to be better at building relationships in order to offset that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. There are some states where it's just you can't get that info. I think Iowa's one. I think some parts of Virginia, I believe so. But yeah, there's some states where it's just like there are no doc states or no info states. So you have to be a little bit more creative in getting that info. So those states we don't necessarily try to focus on because we know how hard it can be, but it can be done because there's people doing them, in those states as well.
Gotcha. So when you enter a new market, do you ever go to the local wholesalers and see what kind of deals they have, or do you always just kind of set up your own systems and, what you learned as a wholesaler, you now apply it and start looking for your own stuff?
Yeah, I think it's really making sure that you know what other wholesalers are in that market. Those wholesalers can be a wealth of information, especially if they're willing to, joint venture with you or do a 50-50 partnership. You get a deal under contract, they bring the buyer, or, soon it may be, vice versa. I think it's very tremendous to be, to friend those wholesalers in those other markets to find out a little bit more about what they're doing. And do it that way. So that I definitely recommend. I mean, just to go in, I mean, you could go into a market and drop marketing and do that and just kind of pick and find your way as far as how to get that deal sold and putting it out to buyers. You could do that. But I truly think that networking with others in that market can certainly help you out further. And then you can get to the point to where, I mean, you're kind of off on your own and, you may not need that wholesaler or you've built your buyers list or you've built a pretty good solid footing in that market. And then at that point, you can kind of take off there.
Gotcha. Carrie was just saying in the chat that it's a little bit overwhelming how much information you have access to in the US. Like you must at sometimes sort of get overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of data you have to wade through in order to identify things.
A lot, yeah, a lot of data. I try to narrow it down to like I use for our platform. There's a company called RealFlow. And we use RealFlow as kind of like our back office. That's where all of our properties are. All of our buyers, we're able to shoot out direct mail from there. We can comp properties from there. And then we use an app called Deal Machine. And Deal Machine, of course, allows you to do driving for dollars, or now you can just, kind of set what's the word I'm looking for, set a filter for, non-occupied properties or pre-foreclosures or vacants or absentee, and it'll highlight those houses wherever you are. And you can click a button and send out mail from there, or skip trace from there as well. So, I mean, just being able to have access to that data certainly cuts down on not having to go out and drive. A lot of stuff we can do right from the office. When I was in Miami, was two, 3 months ago. Okay, yeah, sit on the beach and look at properties. I'm like, you just have that access to be able to be able to do that, which is great.
That's awesome. So do you have any sort of shortcuts that you take? Like, do you have any formulas that you use? Like, I know some investors up here, when they're talking, they have like, back of the napkin kind of formulas that they use to decide if a property is worth more than, the 2 seconds that it took them to take a look at it. Do you have anything like that you're willing to share, just sort of like for numbers for a flip or something?
Yeah, and it's usually, and just kind of depending on the market, can be anywhere when you're going into, interested in a property, you're going in to buy, and that could be your, like your ARV times anywhere between 70 to 80%. You subtract out your rehab cost, and then you subtract out your, let's say if you're wholesaling, you subtract out the fee that you're looking to make, and then that gives you what they call the MAO, or your maximum allowable offer. So once you do that, that lets you know what you need to offer that seller. And that really kind of goes whether you're deciding to fix and flip or, do wholesaling. That's like a standard here. The ARV times now it's anywhere between 70 to 80%. Again, less the rehab, less what you want to make on that deal. And then that's your offer to the seller.
Gotcha. Love that. Are you finding that wholesale fees have gone through the roof? Like, I've seen some wholesale fees in the last year where it's like $40,000, $50,000. And I mean, when I was never a full wholesaler. If I had extra deals or opportunities, I would put them out for other people. But I mean, when I was doing it, I was charging, $5,000 or $6,000. Maybe if it was a rent to own and I, got the tenant buyer and done all that stuff, maybe I'd be looking for 10 because it was, a beautiful little investment opportunity with a bow on the top of it. But I know it costs a fortune for the advertising, but I was a little staggered to see like $40,000 and $50,000 because it's hard to make the numbers work after that. Is that something you see in your market too, that wholesale fees have really taken off?
Yeah, like here in Omaha, you may be able to clear out between 7,500 to 10,000 on a wholesale deal. That makes sense in our market. But I'll go to Atlanta and I can do 20 or 25 there, as long as the numbers still work for that end buyer. Not just looking out for yourself, but looking out for that investor who's going to come back to you for another property. You want to make sure that there's enough meat on the bone, of course, for them to be able to make a profit, even if they're just keeping it as a rental, making sure that their base is covered there, or if they're flipping it, making sure that they can make out with a decent amount of income. But yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I've seen 50,000. I've seen a post today. Somebody made 114 grand on a wholesale field. Well, give it that that was a $5 million portfolio of single family homes. So that's decent. That's okay.
Yeah.
But there's still on people who like in Phoenix, in California, the wholesale fees out there are like 150 to 200 grand, and people are paying them. People are overpaying for homes. It's mind-boggling to me, but that's the game. Me and one of my partners said, you got to pay today's prices, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah. There's some houses here in Omaha that a year ago you could get for $50,000 or $60,000 that today are 120, 125. That's without anything being done to them.
Wow.
So it's just people are overpaying and the fees are increasing, and the game is definitely getting played for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I understand, everybody wants the opportunity to make money. I guess the way I like to do business is I sort of go, what creates a scenario where everybody who's involved in this deal.
Yes, that's it. That's
because
it.
it's so much easier to work with an existing customer or client than it is to spend the marketing dollars to go out and recruit somebody brand new.
Right. That's it. Man, hit it right on the head.
All right. So tell us about your hotels, because these are super exciting. So you've been looking at buying hotels,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
then what? Then what happens?
Yeah. So looking at buying hotels, was lucky to be a partner on a couple of those deals. One, I'll be exiting the beginning of next year, and then the hotels, of course, are a whole different beast. A lot of them, of course, took some beat downs during COVID. Right now, you have a lot of distressed sellers who are finding a hard time trying to keep hold of their hotels. So now, even now, it's still the perfect time to be able to invest in hotels, in my opinion. Because there's just a lot of distressed ones out there that you can pick up maybe and just do even a 5-year play on it. I mean, you can get in there, especially if you can just take over the note. Take over the note, decrease some expenses, increase advertising, get more people, of course, into that hotel, because in some hotels it's a different caliber of person that's staying now. It's not like your everyday traveler. So you really have to look at that too. So hotels are definitely still a bet. I think a lot of hotels and a lot of the bigger flags are really starting. Well, they have put together plans as far as, okay, what happens if something else happens again and we have to shut down? What are those measures, and what do we do this time around? And we've done that, of course, in our partnership too. Um, the the renovations, the turnarounds, the conversions, that's truly a whole different beast too. We had a property that we were going to do here in Omaha. It was an old Sheraton hotel that shut down during COVID, and when we went to go tour that property, it's like everything it was so eerie because the lights were still on, newspapers were still on the desk and in the room. There was nobody in the hotel. Me and the broker were the only ones in the hotel.
That's great.
You still got food in the kitchen. Like, they literally, when was that, March 13th, when everything shut down, it's like everybody just broke and left because everything was still exactly where it was. And we toured that was a year ago. Yeah, September, October of 20, when we had toured that. And so we had the idea of, okay, well, let's take and would have to cut down the rooms. I think it was like a 220 room hotel. We were going to cut down the rooms to like 100, and just have that part of the multifamily. We were going to take out the event space and the pool, and we were going to construct another 150 units. Well, that went from 18 million to 35 million overnight. So we're just like, no, I think we're going to hold off on, doing the conversions.
Mhm.
For that part. And not to say that it doesn't work, because it does. There's a lot of people out there who have been successful with conversions, but it's just good to make sure that you know your numbers, because once you start opening up walls, hotels are built completely different from multifamily properties, especially back then. So there's a lot of different things that you have to do in doing the conversion. So conversions, I'm pretty sure we that's something that we would continue to look at in the future. But for right now, just interested in doing, acquiring hotels that need help, where we can do a 5-year play, and hold on to them and eventually sell them down the road.
Awesome. So you mentioned something when you started talking about the hotels. You mentioned taking over the note. Can you explain
Yeah.
that? That's not a term that most
Yep.
Canadians, I think, are familiar with.
Yeah. So just taking over the mortgage of that hotel. So whatever is owed on that, and that owner can't pay it, you simply take over. Now, it's of course not as simple just to say, okay, yeah, I'll just take over your note. Of course, the person who's holding that mortgage has to properly vet you and your team as well. With the bigger flags, like with IHG and Holiday Inn Express, they have to vet you and your partners to be able to take over that. If you want to change, flags, or turn an IHG into another brand, there's a pretty hefty fee that you have to pay to do that, especially if you're still within your contract. It was going to cost us $5 million to close down the flag for that Sheraton, and that was his fee. Like, they really stick you with fees if you're ever done with that. It's crazy.
which is crazy because they get nothing if the hotel, like everybody just gets hung out to
Yeah,
dry if the hotel
that's it.
shuts down. Like it's just it's such a short-sighted business practice.
Right, right. Yeah. And that was just so crazy. It's like, okay, so 5 million to drop flag, craziness, so, but it was just, it's some parts of the business that just, it drives me nuts. But, for hotels that you can turn around, like I said, if you can go in there and acquire notice, they can become truly, truly profitable. There's a couple that we're involved with that, within this year, have been able to turn it around. Occupancy is up, and that's great. It's perfect.
And is that because you've adjusted prices, or have you repositioned the hotel? Have you branded, done renovations? Like what are the typical things that you would look at doing if you're buying a hotel with, maybe the idea in the future of converting it to units, but not yet?
Yeah, so a hotel's what they call a PIP, or a property improvement plan. That's always key to look at. And, some during COVID, a lot of the bigger flags, they forgave the PIP maybe for a year or two because of COVID. They didn't want to have to enforce that on, owners, that they had to complete, these renovations or these rehabs. So that's a good thing to look at too. If you want to reposition that, if you want to rehab, of course, again, it's really about decreasing the expenses, increasing advertising to be able to do that. If you're holding special events, that's another good thing too. What ancillary things can you do in the hotel to increase profits? So you're really looking at that bottom line when it comes to that, and just really making sure that you're getting those people through the door. And I tell people too, a full parking lot does not mean that that hotel is profitable. There's so many more things that you have to look at, like we do what we call lot pulls. And that's essentially driving by a hotel's parking lot to see, okay, how full it is. But you have to dig a lot further behind that. Just because that hotel's packed does not mean that it's profitable. You look at, what does it cost to turn a room? Okay, well, when that person, just let's say that room is, maybe $100 a night. Well, to turn that room is probably between 45, maybe 45, 50, $55 to turn that room. And then of course there's some other fees in there too. So maybe you only made $30 or $40 off of that $100 room. There's different things that you have to look at when you're doing that turn. So again, it really comes down to getting more people through the door, turning more people, and being able to do that. And if you have, contracts with airlines and contracts with casinos, different things like that, that helps out tremendously too. But again, it's just, what can you do for that hotel to truly turn that hotel around? That's it.
Yeah. So it sounds like location is really important in choosing your
Very, absolutely.
If you're in the middle of nowhere and you're not close to anything, it makes it that much harder to be able to build those relationships and get
yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's such a different world. It's not something I've thought a lot about doing. We just, I guess here too, we just don't have the sheer volume of hotels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me, is the US or the markets you're in, are you guys having trouble finding labor? Like in Canada here, there's a lot of us it's very challenging to find contractors, in part because contractors can't find people to come to work every day. The stores where you go to buy all your materials and supplies, the companies that are producing everything, we're all struggling with finding people who are willing to come to work and on a consistent basis. Are you seeing that as well, or is that because of all the handouts the Canadian government's giving?
Yeah, thanks for taking all the meals.
Yeah.
No, but we've definitely seen a lot of that, which is just like, man, so it's kind of keeping those, again, going back to building those relationships.
Yeah.
And seeing, contacting people who are in your network to say, okay, who are you working with? Now, granted, some people, if they have a crew that's already working on their property, some of them are maybe less inclined to be like, okay, yeah, here, take my guy, because you don't want him to stop working on yours or working on theirs and come work on yours. Yeah. But it's really, again, just building those relationships. I know a big thing, people tell is to go to Lowe's and go to Home Depot. That's where you'll find, contractors at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning grabbing their stuff, which is true. I've done it and found a couple of, good, reliable guys that are still with me. And this is 4 years ago when I did a flip here in Omaha. So those guys are still with me to this day, and met them through doing that. Mm-hmm. So it's where you can find them, and then of course making sure that they are reliable contractors, and do not pay them up front. Never pay a contractor up front. Don't do that. Ask me how I know. So never do that. Never
Sensing a
do.
story.
Exactly. Yeah, the Kansas City rehab that I did, one of the first rehabs that I did, paid the guy up front like 25 grand up front. So, oh my God, why did I do that? Nothing went right, with that property, and I had to take him to court and do all that. So it just becomes a big mess. But yeah, there's different ways that you can do that business, and everybody can be successful. You don't have to be greedy. Everybody can be successful in this business, man, as long as you stay on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find good contractors are really worth their weight in gold. There's so
Yes.
many people out there now who are like, I'm a contractor. And
Right.
the market that I'm in, we have a lot of gold mines up here. So every time when there's a bit of a contraction in the mining and people get laid off, all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's 15 new contractors in town, and there's varying degrees of skill within those,
Yeah.
among the new contractors, and different levels of ethics as well. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
finding contractors. It's nice to know that it's kind of a universal thing, and it's not just
Yeah. Not just there. It's definitely universal.
perfect. So looking back, what do you wish you had known when you started your journey? What might you have done differently, whether it's a mindset thing, whether it's a discipline thing, whether it's, I wish I knew this piece of information. What do you wish you knew when you started out?
I wish I would have knew to also not just focus on single family, but also focus on multifamily as well, on the wholesaling aspect of it. And then I wish I would have jumped more into virtual wholesaling too. It's cool being in your market, but being able to close a property in another market as well. So I think I wish I would have scaled a little bit sooner, and did a couple of those different strategies looking back, because my marketing, I was just so awesome with marketing and so awesome with getting the message across. I wish I would have took that with wholesaling, multifamily, and then doing virtual in other markets. I believe the business could have truly exploded, if I would have focused on that.
Wow, that's great. Do you do coaching in wholesaling? Like you mentioned earlier in our conversation, coaching. So what is it you coach on specifically?
Yeah, so I do coach on wholesaling, single family, and also multifamily, but only when asked. So I don't actively put it out there. So only when asked of people, and that's due to, of course, my schedule. I have to make sure that I have enough time dedicated to the person who is looking to get mentor from me. So that's always a big thing. If I have that spot available, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll rock and roll it, with wholesaling, or with the whole syndication process with multifamily. And I do one-on-one Zooms, once a week with them, and give them benchmarks every week to do that, and then follow up with them, and certainly walk them through their first deal wholesaling or their first syndication, and share my resources and what helps me in both of my businesses too. So, but yeah, only when asked.
That's awesome. Perfect. And top 3 tips for investors who are entering a new market. So you guys, this is the last question. So if you have questions for Sterling, make sure you start putting them in the Q&A box, or else we'll just open it up for an open discussion. So top 3 tips for investors who are entering a new market and or changing investment strategies.
Yeah, so definitely knowing your market. Knowing your market is definitely key. Like what we talked about earlier, you just have to make sure, that you know the market and the key players in that market. Network with them. They can be a wealth of awesome information. So if it's truly something that you want to get into, use those tools, use those resources, network. Goodness, realtor.com has been awesome for me to use, so I can see what's happening in a particular market. I do like using that for research purposes. Reonomy on the multifamily side. But yeah, just really taking a look at the marketing and where you want to be. List source for using the hot zip codes, technique that I described. So doing those things truly help you out in getting into that market. Choosing what strategy that you're going to do. Do you want to go into this market and wholesale? Is it fix and flips? Is it rentals? Choosing what you're going to be looking to do going into that market is truly key, just so you're not going necessarily everywhere. Maybe just choose one strategy, stick with that, master that before you move on to the next one. And a lot of people they'll take and they'll just do, wholesaling. That gets into fix and flips, that gets into rentals, and then you can go ahead and you can scale from there. The other one is recruiting, of course, boots on the ground. That can kind of go with, number one, having someone that if you identify a property and you get that property under contract, is there somebody that can go out there that can grab pictures for you, grab videos? They don't necessarily have to say anything to the seller as far as things number and negotiation wise. You can take care of that, unless you guys are doing a true partnership. Then that's cool too. So having boots on the ground that can do that, and you guys can work out a fee as far as is it a part of the deal? Is however that is, but definitely having somebody in that market that can go see that property, get their eyes on that property, take pictures and video for you are key. And some of that stuff you can either hire on like Craigslist, pay somebody $20 or $50 to go and take pictures of properties and work with your college students. I've done that before too. College students or college interns, they love doing stuff like that, especially if they take an interest in real estate. So those would definitely be my top three, just knowing your market and identifying the key players, making sure that you have, of course, those boots on the ground. And then certainly identifying what strategy that you're looking to do when you get in there.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I know a lot of people, they prefer to invest close to them. What was it that sort of pushed you from investing, in, Omaha and around you to looking at other markets as well?
Yeah. So when it starts to get like around this time, things start to slow up here, start to get cold outside, sales kind of slow a little bit. Buyers are a little reluctant to really get out there and do something. So that's what led me to go south, to Texas and to Atlanta to do, wholesale deals. Is pretty much warm there year round. So that's one of the things that led me to that, because I could still keep that deal flow going. And then just knowing that I wanted to scale and work in other markets were truly key as well. I love building relationships. I love partnerships, and I love traveling too. So that helps out a lot as well. I like to, get on a flight and go see a deal, more so the multi-family stuff than the single family stuff. But yeah, just doing that is what led me to it.
That sounds awesome. Somebody had said, what does coaching look like with you? Timing, costs, and a success story. So I think maybe that might be something. Do you want to share it now, or do you want to sort of connect offline? Because I will put up your contact information. So if anybody's interested in coaching, if they can reach out to you. This video will be posted on YouTube as well. So that may be something that you don't necessarily want everybody on YouTube to know.
No, that's completely fine. Like I said, when asked if I'm able to take anybody on, I certainly will. I think there's like 3 spots that I have now that are open. So mentoring with me is $1,500. That's my fee, but that covers a whole year. So it's not like it's a monthly fee or anything like that. It's $1,500 for the year. That's one-on-one coaching with me once a week. And, we can text and email back and forth and do that. We can have those sessions via Zoom or phone. I give you my resources, contracts that I have, essentially walk you through A to Z on doing a wholesale deal. And that's whether if you want to do single family or multifamily, or if you want to do the syndication of larger deals. And that's really anything, well, you can syndicate a portfolio of houses, you can syndicate anything, but really for the larger syndications, anything above 30 units that you're looking at, we walk through that whole entire process. I give you the deal analyzer that I use. And of course, those resources, I make introductions to my funding sources that I use as well. So it's like it's really like I'm not the whole bells and whistles coach. I don't have spiffy presentations and websites and all of that. I don't have that. What I have is what I use and what's real to me and what I've learned. And that's what we cover. That's what we cover every single week.
I think that is probably the biggest screaming deal I have heard in the last decade. $1,500 for a year with you.
For a year. Yeah.
I feel like I should pay you more.
And you're not the first person to say that for me, it's just like, I know, just having that dedication, having that time, and just doing that every week, man, there's just been people who have, especially in the single family part, who have just taken off within like a month or two, and it's been awesome with that. The syndication side is a little bit more complex, and it is, because it is a security. You have to deal with the SEC. There's different things that you have to deal with and do on the syndication side, but people still are interested in it and want to take part of it. So, but yeah, that covers whether you want to do the the wholesaling, single family, multifamily, or the syndication.
Perfect. And Mark actually said that's insanely inexpensive.
So there's only 3 spots. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, so we've got a bunch of questions here.
Cool.
Okay, so how much does it cost to get started in wholesaling, and what do you do first?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, again, it is such a marketing intensive business that marketing is going to be truly key. So for me, and I mean, everybody will kind of have a experience with that, but it's developing, your websites, developing your marketing, figuring out what list you're going to pull. And that can be, I mean, everybody pulls absentee. I mean, not to say that you can't get deals from absentee lists, because you can, vacant lists, but tax defaults, code violations, probates, divorces, even the water list. Like, you call the water company and have them tell you, what properties have been shut off for in the last 30 to 60 days. Those lists are out there. Your county assessors list, those lists are out there. So using, those strategies are cool. But again, having that website up, social media, huge. Making sure that you have a company Facebook page, Instagram, making sure that you're putting yourself out there as a brand. I'm very big on branding. I think that's very, very key and very important. So just making sure that marketing and branding is truly on point. But really, to get started, I mean, you can get started with like less than $500 if you really want to put it out there and just scale. Don't let anything hold you back. You don't have to have a logo right off the bat. Is it good to have a website? Yes, because these sellers are going to look you up. They're going to find out, who is this person sending me this postcard or this letter? Let me go look them up. So anything that you can give them that shows your face is tremendous.
Which is interesting, because a lot of the wholesalers in the Canadian market right now, I feel like they try really hard not to look like a company. Like, they try really hard to look like, hey, I was just walking down the street and I saw your house and I like it. My wife and I would like to buy it. Like, I feel like there's a little bit of a difference there. And I think it's kind of nice to see that, it's about being professional. It's about being a company. It's about being transparent with who you are and what you do.
Yeah. And then, speaking to that transparency part, I meant to say this earlier too, as far as, sellers wanting to work with you, being transparent is key. So a lot of people say, well, I'm going to buy your house. Not necessarily. It could be, one of your buyers or one of your funding partners. Tell the seller that you are going to make a profit off of their house. Yeah. Be completely transparent with them. So that if you have to show that property to another person, you don't have to be like, oh, I told them that you're with insurance. No, just play it the right way. Tell the seller what your intentions are right off the bat, so that if you do have to bring people, they know, okay, well, that must be a buyer or a partner or whatnot. You have many different exit strategies that, or not many, but you have some exit strategies that you can do with that property. But it's good to just tell the seller up front, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my intent. Right off the bat, and that helps out with that. So that makes the seller so much more comfortable when they're signing that agreement. It's good from there.
And I think, honestly, wholesaling is built on the underlying premise that the seller is not obsessed with money first, that there's other things that are important to them, such as not having people running through the house, such as, being able to leave stuff behind when they leave and not worrying about the condition of the house and all these other things. I mean, the idea for most people, and I think part of the reason wholesalers get some backlash from realtors in particular, is everybody assumes that money is the number one commodity. And for a
Right.
lot of people who are working with wholesalers, money is not the currency that matters the most to them.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's so sellers are, it can be a multitude of things. They could be motivated by money. It could be just, hey, if you're doing like a seller finance type deal, maybe they don't need all the money right up front. Maybe they can take it down and work out the rest. There's many different ways that you can work that, of course, for the seller. So it's not always just money driven. I mean, you have some sellers who are just wanting to get what's owed on that property. They're not even looking to make a profit. They just take it, just pay what's owed. I want it from up under me.
Yeah.
That's it. So you really have to, determine that seller motivation for that. Some of them, it's none of that. I just want to sell. And even at retail, that's a whole other thing too. If you can make something work at retail and do a seller finance deal, I mean, that's cool. You could do that. Or if you have your realtor's license, you can list it. That's cool too.
Yep, absolutely, which is awesome. Okay, so we answered that question. And so there's a couple of questions here. How much does Sterling know about the Canadian market? And okay, so I'll let you answer that one and then I'll read the next one.
Very little about the Canadian market. Very little about Canada. I mean, here and there. And I've always said I need to get up there and see what the market's like. How different is it from the U.S. market? What type of success can you have there versus here? Here in the U.S. So that's always been a peak interest. Certainly, when we had our first call and our first introduction, I said, okay, I definitely got to put Canada on the radar now and see what's happening up there. So I'll definitely be up there soon.
And that's interesting because what better way than to take on a couple of Canadian clients and then you get to test all your systems and processes for wholesaling and everything.
I love that. That's true. That's very true.
With clients in different markets, which is awesome.
I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm up for it.
Fantastic. And Rajat said, hi, Sterling. Pleasure to meet you today. Not sure if wholesaling works in and around Metro Vancouver. So are you familiar with Vancouver? Or do you want me to take that one for you?
Yeah, if you take that one, is there kind of like some iffies in Vancouver with wholesaling?
Well, no, wholesaling would actually be great in Vancouver. The challenge is it's probably the hottest market, or it vies with Toronto to be the hottest market in Canada. Awesome. So that means that the numbers work, but the challenge is how you find those motivated sellers, right? Because they can turn around and list it on realtor.ca and make a whole load of money. And Vancouver was stupid long before COVID.
Wow.
Yeah. So it would be a great strategy. Vancouver would be an ideal market for it. It would just be the question of, how much marketing you would have to do to get the lead to make it worth your while.
Yeah. What's the population of Vancouver?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Can someone type that in the chat box? If you know the population of Vancouver. And I see there's a couple of questions in the chat box too. The chat box has been quiet tonight. Usually people are like rapid fire. This is awesome.
2 million? Good.
Okay, so someone had asked, are your funding sources only good for Americans and foreign nationals?
No, so many of them are US based. I have about 6 that do wherever in the world that they're lending, which is good to do. I mean, because obviously me thinking big, I mean, I would love to do some stuff over in Dubai. We've talked about that for this upcoming year. So those would be the lenders that I go to as far as doing that. So
that's awesome. And so the response is between 2 and 2.5 million is the population of Vancouver.
Oh, perfect. Wow. Okay.
And that's like one of our bigger cities, right? Like we're still small compared to the US.
Yeah. Wow. Good. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Gotcha. And it's one of the things I find sometimes as a coach too, is that my clients inspire me to learn and to grow in new areas. So that might actually be a fantastic opportunity to be able to, boots on the ground in Canada for sure.
Right. Yeah, I would love that. I was like, sometimes you'll have students that teach you too, which is awesome, which is great. So yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah, I'm getting more and more heavily into Airbnb and vacation properties courtesy of clients.
Awesome. Love that.
Okay, I think that pretty much covers it for the questions that we've had. If anybody has anything else, we'll circle back at the end. I'm going to do the wrap up for the webinar. And then if anybody comes up with anything else, then we can cover that at the end. What am I doing? Oh, I'm doing, hold on. There we go. And we're going to share our screen. Perfect. Oops. There we go. Okay, so just a couple of things to sort of wrap up and solidify takeaways from our time with Sterling today. And Sterling has just been fantastic. I've enjoyed this so much.
Thank you. Me too.
So make sure you're memorable and you build positive relationships. If more people are talking about you, then more opportunities are going to be brought to you. And I love Sterling. We had a lot of synchronicity on that as well, because I wrote these obviously before the webinar. So find out who the key players are in your market. Make sure that you can spend some time with them. You want to learn from them, but don't do it in like a creepy or kind of a user way. Like, make sure you're providing value. Make sure you're offering assistance. You know, when you get someone like Sterling, I mean, obviously, Sterling, you're an awesome guy. You're a wealth of knowledge. You know, offering to take someone for a coffee might not be the best way to ensure that you know, they really feel like their time is being respected and valued as well.
Yeah, I think I pretty much put a stop to the pick your brain meetings.
Yeah. Because you know, you got a big brain with lots in it.
Right.
At $1,500 for coaching, I mean, that's just crazy. Know your numbers so that you can spot a deal and take action in seconds, not days. I think that's really, really important for a lot of people. I think that's how a lot of opportunities are getting missed right now, is that people are taking days and days to look at, you know, wholesale opportunities, or to, you know, call people back, or to run their numbers. You know, get to a point where you have these short forms, or you have, you know, a quick and dirty spreadsheet that you just get in there and you run the numbers and you're like, yeah, you know, it's within this criteria. I'm going to put an offer in, or I'm going to see what I can do and to lock this up. And I think if we get in the habit of taking action faster, there will be less opportunities that get away from us. And the last one is to focus on being a savvy investor. So focus more on finding and creating opportunities than you are on a specific strategy. And, well, you know, I do BRRRRs, or, you know, I do duplexing, or I do this. Focus more in these hot markets on finding a deal, on finding a property where, you know, you're paying 80 or 90 cents on the dollar, and then look at how you can monetize that property and what you're going to do long-term with it. So at the end of my webinars, Sterling, I always have a giveaway. Tonight's giveaway is the Action Takers Real Estate Investing Planner, courtesy of Quentin D'Souza. Can you give me a number, Sterling, between 1 and 48?
32.
32, perfect. So my rockstar VA, Mary Beth, will circle back with entrant number 32, person who attended the webinar this evening, and you will receive the Action Takers Real Estate Investing Planner. Congratulations, and we will post the successful person in the Canadian Real Estate Investing Mastermind. For those of you who are joining us who are not part of my Facebook group, this is your personal invitation to join my two groups. Sterling is now part of both of them as well, so you can call him out anytime you feel like it. The Canadian Mastermind is more around discussion, engaging, enlightening, and empowering Canadians to invest in real estate. Whereas the Canadian Real Estate Investment Hub is really where you can look for your next deal or share your opportunity and look for financing or partners. I also have here the contact information for us. So if you'd like to connect with me afterwards, always love to hear from you. Love feedback on webinars and to chat about real estate. So Instagram for Sterling and myself, as well as I have an email address, and Sterling has an email address, and I have my website. So please, we love to connect and learn more about each and every one of you and your journey there. Everybody inspires us, and of course we learn from people as well along the way. My next webinar, the final one for 2021. I can't believe I've been doing this almost 3 years now. It's amazing. So I have invited 3 people who I have enjoyed being on their podcast and learning a ton from them. So we're going to pull them in with their big brains, and we are going to learn more about what they have learned during their time as podcast hosts in the real estate world. You know, what some of the key things were that they took away from their guests, how, you know, these learnings have impacted their business and kind of where they are or what's happened during their journey as podcast hosts. So we've got Rob Brake from the Breakthrough Real Estate Investing podcast. We're going to have Sarah Larby, and we have Erwin Cito from The Truth About Real Estate Investing for Canadians. So I'm really excited about this one. We're going to have some fun. I'm guessing there might be some wine during that one, but we'll see what happens. So thank you so much, everyone who attended this evening. We do have a couple more questions that have come in. So one of the questions was, coaching is included wholesale and multifamily in the US only. So I think we kind of concluded that you would definitely be interested in learning more about the Canadian market and being able to support people up here as well with wholesale and multifamily.
Yep.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay. And if we go back to the chat here, let's see. Oh, Mark said, what you had to share was great. Very inspiring to see you being so successful while having a large family and taking time for yourself. I think that's so inspiring because a lot of us as real estate investors, particularly when we're starting out, we're all hustle and we forget about the balance, and then, then we kind of get burned out and
that balance is so key. They're on their way back now. My wife knew I had it. She said, oh no, we got to get out of the house because the kids are going to be upstairs jumping and playing. So they went to my brother-in-law's while I was doing this. And I truly appreciate that, because when it's things like this, I just like to have it absolutely quiet, but my boys, that not so much.
Absolutely. Well, please thank your wife for us and your family for being so understanding. We appreciate that. Great stories shared here tonight. Thank you, Sterling. Oh, you guys are fantastic. Everybody's just saying thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I really appreciate that. This has been awesome. I'm always happy to share, you know, my experiences and what I've been through and strategies with others. So that's awesome. That's cool. Anybody who's interested in mentoring, let me know. Again, I've got those 3 spots available. So let me know. I usually schedule an onboarding call first. And during that onboarding call, it's ideal just to see where you are now, where you want to go, and what we need to do to get you there. So we discuss that, and then we're off and running.
Fantastic. Sterling, such a pleasure. Love connecting with you. Let's stay in touch, and yeah, have a fantastic Christmas. So grateful.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best, guys. Have a fantastic month. We'll see you again in December. I think it's the 13th. Yep, December 13th at 7 p.m. And come with your wine, and we'll have a toast to the new year at the end. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.